I feel like inside of this industry, we have been conditioned to think that strategy is everything. That if we just have the right strategy, the right steps, the right process, that it will fix everything. And in some cases, it will. But strategy is not everything. It's one side of the coin, it's one part of the equation. There's a whole different invisible side that a lot of people will ignore. And you might want to label it self-development, but it's even deeper than that. There's invisible elements, things like your personal power, your energy, moving yourself into your dharma or your alignment, that when combined with the right strategy, it can take you to the stratosphere. And when I look at everyone who's successful, they actually have a blend of both. Business is about balance. It's not about having all personal development, all strategy. It's about combining all of them together. And inside our program, we actually have 7 different elements that we talk about and we bring our students through to unleash those invisible things combined with the strategy. And today we're going to talk about one of them, which is like my top 1 or 2 elements that I think is incredibly important. And without this element, I think it'd be extremely difficult to build a business, and especially in today's day and age, especially a personal brand, especially when you're creating content, putting yourself out there and you're selling courses, programs, or services. So if you're ready to hear what this is and how to overcome it, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. We are going to talk about personal power today. Personal power is something we talk about a lot inside of our program, but I realize it's not really something that I talk about a lot on the podcast. And for me, everything is about balance. It's about masculine and feminine energy. It's about the yin and the yang. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love our program so much, is it really balances both of those things. And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in strategy, tactics, action, doing, and there actually needs to be a nice, beautiful blend. Everything in life is about balance, and it's about harmony. And I find that true to be, true with my wife, with my family, with my kids, with my relationships with my family, like brothers and sisters, things like that. Friends, my work, and everything's about balance. And when I mean balance, it's kind of like we can't just go 100% of the time. We need silence, we need rest, we need all of that in every area of our life. And the way this shows up for me in business is that I kind of go in waves, and I think people like to use the language of seasons. I'm in a season of this and a season of that. And I like the term seasons, but the way I like to look at it is it's just a balance where we can't go all the time. We can't just do strategy all the time. There's invisible things that make strategy work. There's things like, people will call it, quote unquote, the it factor. Oh, that person just has it, right? They have the it factor. And it's not that they have the it factor. It's that they're tapping into, whether they know it or not, they're tapping into invisible elements. And inside of our program, what we do is we kind of create that balance where we unleash these invisible elements, so that when you get to the tactic or strategy or language patterns of our program, you're able to show up more powerfully. You're able to discover what your message is. You're able to silence the external world. You're able to maintain more personal power. And the reason why this is so important is because, in my opinion, powerful people create powerful messages. Powerful people have powerful messaging, and powerful people also have great and powerful marketing. And I look through the industry, and I'm going to give a couple examples, whether you like them or not. That's not the point here. Billy Jean is one person who popped up a couple of years ago because he did these crazy movie style ads, right? And went for it, spent all this money, did it, because he wanted to do it. And I think a lot of people that were in that position And if you haven't seen his ads, they're pretty funny. They're pretty cool. And I also heard him say that they also weren't very effective as far as cost per lead goes, but for branding purposes, they're amazing. But he redid, ads like Wolf of Wall Street, or I think is it Sparta or Spartan or whatever. They're almost basically movies, recreations of movies, and went out and put them as ads, and then had, obviously referenced it as marketing type of stuff. So it's kind of like, what marketer here is gonna step up? And it's just it's like, everyone's in costumes and all that stuff. So they're basically mini movies, ads based off of mini movies. And when I look at that, people go like, oh, all Billy did was created a movie style ad. Makes sense. And it may seem very obvious. And it's like, if you are that type of person going, oh, here's what they're doing. It's so obvious. This person just did this. They just did a movie style ad, or they just did this. Well, why aren't you doing it then? If that's all they did, and you look at someone, it doesn't need to be Billy, it could be anyone inside of the space. And I know there's people look at me and they go like, all Brandon's doing is X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, cool. If that's all I'm doing, then why aren't you doing it? Very simple, basic question. Why aren't you doing it? And that's what this podcast is all about, because there's invisible things going on. Yeah, technically on the surface level of what the actions Billy took was creating a movie style ad. That's what he did. But what he didn't do was get into fear or worry, or maybe he did, but he didn't let that stop him. What if I don't make the money? What if this doesn't work? What if people judge me for it? What if? No, he went and actually did it. And that's what today's episode is all about, is maintaining personal power, going and doing it anyways. And what I have found is that when we maintain more personal power, we actually become way more effective in our marketing, and we become more effective in our relationships. We become more effective in creating the life that we want to create, creating the results that we want to create. I can give you all the tactics in the world. In fact, I have on this podcast already given you some great tactics of how to get DMs, how to get webinar, like do a webinar. But I already know 70% of the people listening didn't do any of it. It's like, why not? Like, you have the actions, you have the things, all the steps that you need to do. But there's other things that come up. There's a lack of personal power. You get into self-doubt, fear, worry. You live by your circumstances. So you're like, I'm busy, or this or that, or I have something else going on. And maybe you do, and that's totally fine. You can always come back to it at some point. But I know there's a good amount of people that didn't take action because of things that leak your personal power, fear, worry. What if it doesn't work? I don't have the time for it right now, or whatever it may be. And so today what I wanted to talk about is one of those invisible elements, which is personal power, which is a huge part of our program. And personal power is something that even if you have the right tactic, the right actions, the right whatever, if you don't have personal power, the chances of that tactic or whatever working for you probably won't work. Or it's going to be a lot harder to get it to work if you're leaking personal power all over the place. I mean, for example, imagine if you decided, hey, I wanted to do a really cool, crazy ad, and I have this great idea, and then you go and you are filled with self-doubt, worry, and anxiety the entire time while creating it, filming it, putting it out there. What type of energy is going to be in that advertising? What kind of energy is going to be consumed by the viewer? And is that energy really going to help produce the results that you want? And a lot of the time, when people show up in content and they're kind of like, I don't know, or you can tell in their tone or their voice, their energy, that something's off, the audience can feel it. And part of what I strive to do inside of all of my content is, if something doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But I'm not going to let my lack of personal power or energy be the reason why it doesn't work. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to move forward with the understanding that I'm going to go all in. I almost cussed. I try to cuss a little less on the podcast, just in case there are kids listening. And in case parents don't want cussing around their kids. But anyways, no, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. I'm not going to let a drop or lack of personal power be the reason why something doesn't work. And so we've done this in the past. We've done crazy, weird ads where I've dressed up in like 80s disco, not disco. Oh gosh, what is it? It's like bright neon yellow jumpsuits, and I'm like breakdancing is what it is, breakdancing ads. I filmed videos literally on YouTube when I first got started. Like there's scenes where I'm like in Speedos. There's scenes where I'm like throwing bread against the wall, like just crazy, weird things, right? Or not even weird, just abnormal things. And when I did it, I showed up 100%, did it, went all in on it. And some of them worked and some of them didn't. But the thing is whether I had personal power or not, some things will work and some things won't. So if you know that when it comes to marketing, advertising, messaging, business, that some things will work and some things won't work, doesn't it make sense just to show up in full personal power and strength the entire time? To me, it does. And so let's dive into this whole concept of personal power. How do we use it? How do we identify if we're leaking it? All of that. I'm just going to go through the process that I've used personally. There's a lot of people talking about personal power. Tony Robbins talks about it. There's a lot of spiritual teachers that talk about personal power, a lot of self-development courses that talk about personal power. But what I love to do on this podcast is to talk about my own experience instead of regurgitating someone else's philosophy on it. So I'm just going to kind of base this episode off of my experience in building a multi-million-dollar business, figuring out what messaging is, how to coach people through messaging. I'm just going to give you my mastery of personal power based off of what I've discovered over the last couple of years. So the first thing for me is that the number one stealer or taker or burglar, so to speak, of personal power is the external world. And the external world, I label it as anything outside of yourself. So this means haters, parents, society, just bills, anything outside of yourself is considered the external world. And the external world robs so many people of their personal power. Because as humans, we're designed with certain sort of survival instincts. And one of those is to fit in a group setting, to be accepted. We have to eat, we need water, we have basic survival instincts. And when those instincts are threatened, then our nervous system goes into fight or flight, and we start to freak out, and we start to bend and change and adjust who we are to fit those survival instincts. And the biggest one that I'm referring to right now in this moment is the survival instinct to fit into the group, to be accepted by the group. And so what starts to happen is that when we try to create something, we almost try to create and this can even happen on the subconscious level, we try to create something that we think will be accepted by the group. And this is actually what causes a lot of people to blend in, because you're very generalized, you're very safe. And and ironically, that's what kills your business. Yeah, you're going to fit in, but you're not going to have a successful business. But the way I look at it personally is I look at the external world almost as like this sphere, I guess, or like bubble, so to speak. And we're like inside of this bubble, and we are forced, or our survival instinct makes us try to act, do, and say what's going to be accepted by the bubble so that the bubble doesn't pop. But I think what most people never ask is who created the bubble? Who created what is normal? Who created what is acceptable? Who created, what is normal? No one seems to ever ask that question. And a couple of years ago, I asked myself that question. Why are there so many industry norms that are causing suffering? Who created what was normal? Who created society norms? Who created what is right, what is wrong? And what you start to realize is that it's the leaders. Ironically, the people that create the bubble are the ones who aren't controlled by the bubble. And so what I started to look at inside of in the space, and that's how I look at the space. That's how I look at the internet marketing space. Is I literally am at a point where I don't care if you agree with me or you don't. I don't care if you like my message or you don't. I don't care if you don't like it, that I'm standing against norms that I see that are causing suffering in people's lives. I don't like it, and I expect you not to like it because most people don't like change. I want to bring change, but what I'm looking at when I create content and when I create messaging is I want to be the person changing the bubble, and I want to create a better bubble that people can live within. But there's so many people, and this may include you, that are controlled by that bubble, by that external world. And this shows up and I'll talk more about how it shows up in a second, but it shows up in the form of not saying what you want to say, being afraid of, because you're afraid of haters, you're afraid of outlash, you're afraid of what people will think, of how people will judge you, all of those things. But you have to understand, when people judge you, they don't like what you're saying, they're basing it off of something. They're basing it off of the bubble. But I don't give a crap about the bubble. I want to create the bubble. I want to create a better bubble for people to live in. And again, I'm going to go back to what I just said earlier. What you need to start asking is not how do you fit into the bubble, but who created the freaking bubble in the first place? And all it is leaders who can critically think, who can see things differently, and have the personal power and the courage to stand up for that change. That's it. That's all it is. And that's how I base a lot of my messaging and marketing and teachings to you and inside of our program and people, listeners of the podcast. But I want you to think about something. Anytime that you have not said something or have not done something or have not become something because you're afraid of losing something, getting outlash or negative feedback, that is an example of the external world controlling you. And I want you to imagine something for a second. So if you're listening to the podcast and you're at a place where you can close your eyes and sit back, go ahead and do that. If you're driving, obviously don't do that. But if you are in a place where you can close your eyes and be safe, go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to imagine for a second, or if you are driving, you can do this when you get home. But I want you to imagine for a second. So close your eyes and imagine that you're in the woods. Just imagine what that looks like. And you're in a different country. You're not in the country that you grew up in. You're not in the country that you currently live. You're in a completely different country in the woods. Start imagining it, okay? You're there, you're by yourself, there's nobody around. The year is 1741. So now imagine that. You're in the woods. Visualize it. You're in a completely different country and the year is 1741. Now, I want you to imagine you grew up with a completely different family. This family has the opposite beliefs of everything your current family believes. They're not with you in the woods. You're by yourself. But those indoctrinations, those rights and wrongs, those things that are normal, that you grew up with are completely different. Now I want you, so I'm going to have you split your attention, split your consciousness for a second. You're going to maintain that, okay? So maintain being in 1741 in the woods, grew up with a completely different family in a different country. And at the same time, I want you to also think about, what are you currently afraid of right now? Why haven't you said or done the things that you want or said you were going to do? Why haven't you said that message that you want to say? Why haven't you taken that risk that you want to take? Why haven't you done it? Think about those things that you're afraid of in the current world. Now we're going to combine the two images. I want you to now bring yourself back to being in 1741 in the woods in a different country. You grew up with a different family, and you also have those current today fears, those reasons for why you haven't done the things you want to do. And you're back in 1741. You're in the middle of the woods by yourself. Would you still be afraid of those things? In 1741, in the middle of the woods in a different country, would you be afraid of taking a risk of starting a business and losing your house, losing your car? No, because cars didn't even exist then. Would you have the same fears? Probably not. If you were in the woods completely by yourself, would you have any fear of saying exactly what you want to say? No. Why? Why is that? If you're alone in the woods in 1741 and you had a message that you want to say, and it doesn't even have to be 1741 anymore. It could be today's day and age, and you're in the middle of the woods by yourself, no other humans existed. Would you be afraid of saying what you want to say? Probably not. If I asked you today to go into the woods and what is the one message that you want to get out in the world unfiltered, what is it? Would you be afraid to go into the middle of the woods and say it? No. But then the second you're plugged back into the bubble, you're afraid of saying it. Why? Because you let the external world steal your personal power. Now, I also want to have a little disclaimer here. This means being very smart and intentional with what you're saying inside of your business. I'm just going to give a perfect example. This is a real world example. There might be things that you want to say politically or around the system or whatever it may, whatever it might be. And if that's not related to your business, I recommend you do not do that. But if there's something related to your business and the message you stand for in your business and you're not saying it, that's what I'm referring to. For example, there's a lot of opinions on COVID, masks, politics going on right now. And there's a lot of people that teach certain things like YouTube or Instagram or weight loss that are now, because they have some sort of following or significance, saying what they believe on COVID, masks, politics, vaccines, all of that stuff. We got to separate the two. So what I'm referring to right now is if there's something related to your business and your dharma and your purpose that you aren't saying or doing inside of your business, but if I asked you to go out in the middle of the forest and do it, would you do it? Would you say it? Would you have any problem saying it? And if you told me the answer is no, I wouldn't have any problem saying it. And you get plugged back into the bubble, and you now have a problem with saying it or doing it, that is a massive leak of personal power. And the thing is, I've heard almost every excuse under the sun of Brandon, well, I don't really fully know what the message is, or I kind of can feel it, but I'm not really sure. And so how can I say it? And it's like, well, just go out and try it. And what I have found with messaging and when you start to regain more personal power is personal power doesn't also mean clarity. It doesn't mean you're going to have more clarity, but the more you put things out there in action and experience and mastery you have over it, the more clear things start to become. And that's what this is all about. Is if you are going out into the world and you're not saying or doing what you want to say, but you could go out into the forest and you could say it with no problem and you get backed into the bubble where everyone else exists and you're not going to say it, you're letting the external world control your internal message. But when we look at the most powerful people, the most powerful content creators and influencers and online business owners and personal brands, there is no control of the external world. I mean, look at everyone who's at the top with a great message. Gary Vaynerchuk's a perfect example. He is who he is and he believes in what he believes in. And when it comes to beliefs around his business and how to show up in content and things like that, he's completely unfiltered, does what he wants to do, says what he wants to say, doesn't let the external world control him. Same with people like Grant Cardone or Mel Robbins, Brene Brown. It's like they all have higher amounts of personal power. And when you look at the most successful people and even the people you look up to, I'm willing to bet that they just have regained more personal power than the people who aren't at the top. And yeah, there's a lot of other factors besides that, but that's usually, and again, it's not a 100% for sure thing, but it happens more often than not. And as I regained more personal power, it also has allowed me to show up for my audience stronger because I don't deal with their BS as much anymore. I am more clear and confident in who I am and how I show up and what my message is, and I don't shy away from that. So the big transition here that I want to move into, or the next phase of this, is basically how to help you identify if you are losing personal power, because that's the next thing I've realized is that sometimes people don't even realize when they're losing their personal power. So obviously the big one is fear. So anytime we have a fear around something when it comes to our message, our content, our business, our pivot, what we do, there's some sort of fear around it. And that fear could show up in, I don't want to lose money. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose my car. I don't want to lose my followers. I don't want to lose my audience. I don't, it could show up as, I don't want to get judged. I don't want to have haters. I'm fearful of being called out, all of that stuff. And again, if you were plugged into the middle of the forest and you wouldn't have a problem saying anything, but a second you're plugged back in and the fear comes up, that's the external world controlling you. When you're in the woods in 1741, like, are you really going to have, and you're saying your message, are you going to have the same fears as you do now? No, because it's a completely different environment. And when we can learn to operate without being controlled by the environment, we find dangerous amounts of power. The next way to identify if you're losing personal power is self-doubt. You don't doubt your ability to go out and do something. And I would even argue that comes from a lack of confidence and a fear of being judged. Because if you were fully confident in your ability to go do something, then obviously self-doubt wouldn't be there. But it also means that if you're not confident in something, it usually means it stems from a fear of being judged. Oh, I can't go do this because I'm not as good as someone else, or this person's going to judge me, or this person's better. So self-doubt is an example or identifier of a loss of personal power. Number three, not standing up for yourself is another one. Not standing up to your parents because your parents have told you you're going to be a doctor your entire life and you just did whatever they told you to do. And they basically have stolen your personal power. And as a parent, I'm very careful, or try to do my best. Obviously, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But I try to do my best to help my kids maintain their own personal power without me stepping in as an authoritarian, stealing their personal power, pushing them down. And because that's going to be something they're going to have. Like, if I am not careful of removing that stuff now, they're going to have to do it on their own after years of it, which is going to be a lot harder. And anyone who's been in self-development knows that it's the longer you've had a habit, the harder it is to break. And so not standing up for yourself, not standing up to the parents, not standing up to your teachers, even your mentors. A lot of people don't know this. I don't even know if he knows this, but Jim Thornton has been one of my biggest mentors over the years and continues to be a great mentor of mine. But I don't take Jim's advice more than I do. I would say 25% of the time, I will probably listen and heed his advice. 75% of the time, I don't. And the reason why is because I'm the only one who's going to have my own internal answers of what feels right, what's not right. And yeah, sometimes Jim could be like, well, I don't know. I would personally do this and da-da-da-da-da. But I deep down know what the right decision is. And he can't see that. And your mentors can't see that either. And I can't see that for you. Even the people in the program that come into our program and our ecosystem, I tell them all the time, don't listen to me automatically. Critically think for yourself. Question the advice that I give. And I'm very careful not to give it a lot of advice and to more guide you guys. But question it. If it doesn't sit right with you, then don't listen to it. And I think a lot of people just don't stand up for themselves or blindly follow, even if it goes against their own internal compass. And I think you have to have the personal power to be able to listen and discern between what is great advice for you and aligned with you and what is great advice but maybe not aligned with you, and go with the stuff that is aligned with you. But you have to have your personal power to be able to do that. The next way to identify if you have a loss of personal power is ignoring your dharma. Dharma, in my opinion, is just another word for your purpose. And I think that your purpose changes over the years. I think that there's not just one purpose for your soul on this planet. I think there's a lot of moments that lead up and your purpose will shift and change and maneuver. And I think you might have 20 different purposes in 20 different moments. And purpose number one gives you all the lessons you need to move into purpose number two, and then all the lessons you need there to move into purpose number three. And when I look back at my journey, I teach messaging right now in communication. But when I look back on my journey, I go back, rewind, and I look back at everything that got me to here. And I look at the last 15 years. I started out learning how to SEO websites, following Pat Flynn on the Smart Passive Income podcast about niche sites, ranking them in the search engines. That's what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. I thought I was just going to rank these videos or websites, make a bunch of passive income. I wanted to make $10,000 a month, and I was going to be able to go mountain biking, hiking all day long, right? And I just had these things on autopilot, just cranking out money. Well, then Google changed its algorithm. I put a year's worth of work down the drain because the algorithm changed and my sites were not SEO'd anymore. And I moved to what I thought I knew, which was video. And before I did the niche sites, I worked for my dad who had a video production company. And so I did that. And I started making videos for real estate agents and car dealerships and classified ad sites and stuff like that because I thought I knew that. And that didn't work out. So then I was like, well, let me SEO, put my SEO knowledge to these videos, and bam, they started ranking. So then I started teaching YouTube ads or YouTube advertising, YouTube SEO. But when I look back in those moments, I literally thought my purpose on this planet was to put out good information and enjoy my life. Like I thought that's what it was, what my purpose was. But it was just, and it was in that moment, that's what my purpose was to go do that and to learn that lesson. And then eventually led me to learning YouTube SEO. And I'm like, this is my purpose. I'm going to teach people with a great message how to get their message out there by ranking their videos and getting views on it. And then I look back at that and like, that was just another learning lesson of how to start to develop courses, how to put out programs. It led me to meeting James Wedmore, who's now become one of my best friends. We were business partners. And again, I just go through the whole journey of everything, right? Led me to creating a local video academy with James. And then I thought my purpose was great. I'm going to help all these people start businesses, selling videos and video SEO to local businesses. And that's the program I had with James. It's teach videographers and people how to do video marketing for local businesses and build a business around it. I thought that was my purpose. I'm like, this is going to last forever. And then obviously that gave me one more lesson that led me to, teaching, creating the video Forex effect, and my purpose shifted again. And then it led me to messaging. And now I'm looking at this going like, okay, great. My purpose, my dharma right now in this moment is teaching people how to be really effective communicators and destroy society norms so that we have a better world for our kids. But as we move forward in this direction, I'm also becoming more aware that what I do now with messaging and teaching messaging to you is just one more stepping stone to the next thing. And I can feel the next thing coming. And so I can feel my purpose shifting. And my purpose is shifting more towards the new generation, the next generation, helping the next generation. And I needed to learn how to be a very effective communicator for where I'm going and becoming a very effective communicator for helping the people that I'm going to be helping. And so our purpose continually changes. But what I've done a good job of, I feel like, is not ignoring my dharma for too long. And when we ignore our dharma, our alignment, our purpose, you can feel it on the inside. It's like an internal battle going on the inside. And you're not taking any actions to let it or release it, right? Let it out or release it. And so that's a perfect example of losing your personal power. And then the next identifier, the last one I have on my list, is changing who you are when you're around other people. Changing who you are, forgetting who you are, not remembering who you are is a form of loss of personal power. When you change to the environment that you're in, you go into a new bubble, a different bubble, and you change who you are, you lose yourself. Maintaining full personal power means you are who you are, and you're not afraid to show it. You're not afraid to release it. You're not afraid to stand up for who you are. Again, when you go out in the middle of the woods, are you adapting or changing who you are to fit into everyone else in the woods? No, because there's no one else there. You're just you. And that's it. So those are all ways of identifying a loss of personal power. And what I've personally found is that when I'm losing my personal power, it actually stems from too many attachments. And here's what I mean by this is like, if you have a fear of losing money, it means you're attached to the money, you're attached to your house, you're attached to your car, you're attached to your lifestyle. And what that means is when you have those attachments, it's literally going to affect the actions you take inside of your business. If I'm afraid of losing my house it's going to affect the amount of risk I'm willing to take inside of my business. And sometimes you're going to have to take a big freaking risk in order to grow your business. Your attachments will kill the actions that you take inside of your business. And so when I find I'm losing personal power somewhere, I find that it always stems or is connected to an attachment that I have. Whether that be an attachment to my wife, my kids, my house, my family, my lifestyle, my friends, there's some sort of attachment. But when you start to lose those attachments, you actually start to gain more personal power and you start to live more in your dharma, live more in your purpose. You live more powerfully. Now, I want to be very clear about something. When you lose an attachment, it doesn't mean you lose that thing in your life. What it means is that when you start to lose attachments to certain things, it means that if those things left your life, the amount of suffering you would go through lessens or goes away. So for example, if I was attached to my house and I wasn't making the right business decisions, and so I started to work on losing the attachment to the house, and I'm not attached to the house anymore, if I took that risk in business and I lost the house, there wouldn't be a huge amount of suffering involved. It'd be like, oh, okay, I lost the house and I move on to something else. Now, do I want to lose my house? No. Do I want to go through that? No, I don't. If it happened, would I have a huge amount of suffering? Maybe at first, because I still have a little bit of attachment there, but not a lot. Like I think I would be able to handle it a lot better than other people because I've been working on losing my attachments to a lot of material things. Now, do I want material things? Do I want the big house and have fun with my kids in a big house? Yes. Do I want the big yard? Yes. Do I want a nice car? Yeah. Am I attached to those things? No. And again, that means that if I don't have them, will I suffer? The answer is no. I will be fine. I will be happy. And so what we have to start to do is to lose those attachments. Now, from my experience, some of the hardest attachments to lose is family, like losing the attachment to your kids or your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever, husband, wife. Those are the hardest. And I can officially say that I have not lost the attachment to my kids. If I lost one of my kids, there would be a lot of suffering involved in that. But usually those aren't going to be related to your message or your business. I don't know, maybe they are, who knows? But anyways, when you start to identify a loss of personal power, what I urge you to explore is what attachments do you have that are causing you to lose that personal power? So what I've found is that attachment is directly related to a loss of personal power in your life. But we need personal power in order to create change, to stand up in our business, to stand up for what we believe in, to live in our dharma and our alignment. So what I found is that attachments to certain things literally stop you from following your purpose, your dharma, and being in alignment. And for me, that was like a big moment because I was like, oh man, it's not necessarily about just being brave and courageous and forcing myself to go do these things and just force this personal power. I started to realize if I want more personal power, I actually do some internal work on like losing attachments. And then it made it so much easier to regain my personal power because I wasn't attached to anything anymore. And that to me was like the big mind-blowing moment. So what I want for you guys and what I urge for you to do is, because the big question is like, how do I start to lose these attachments? Again, I don't have a big philosophical way of doing it. I'm just going to tell you exactly how I do it. Number one is that sometimes a loss of attachment happens in chunks. It doesn't all happen at one moment. So you could feel in certain moments losing attachments to certain things for 5 minutes, and then you go right back to where you were. But if you can start to extend those 5 minutes and things like moving your attention, shifting your perception of certain things, looking at the bright side of things, looking at what opportunities happen when something leaves your life. For example, if I'm attached to my house, what I like to do is look at what opportunity does losing my house give me. And that gives me the opportunity to easily take action, to go take bigger risks. It moves me out of my comfort zone. I start to look at things positively. But the number one thing that I've done to help me regain personal power and lose these attachments is going out into the woods, into the wilderness, into nature. Whether that be going to the beach, going to the woods, going to the lake, going to the desert, whatever it may be. go where there's no other humans. And what I do is I look at my fears and I wash them away, because when I'm in there in the woods by myself, I don't really care about the house. I don't really care about the haters. It's like none of that world really exists anymore. And when that world, that bubble doesn't exist, I feel extremely powerful. Like I can accomplish anything. There's no fear. There's no attachments to anything. I'm in the woods by myself with a backpack. I don't have a house in that moment. I don't have a car in that moment. I'm not with my family in that moment. I am Brandon. I am myself. I am my message. I am my dharma. I am my purpose. And that is powerful. And I maintain that feeling when I'm in the woods. I know what I'm going to say. I even rehearse what I'm going to say. Sometimes I walk past hikers and they're like, who is this freak talking to himself? I'll recite content. I'll recite all this stuff. Absolutely no fear. I get in the car and I come back. And I start to notice how crazy it is the second I get back in my house. I don't have that same amount of power that I did in the woods with my message. So I have to be mindful to keep that power, maintain that power. But I find the more I'm in nature, the more I'm connected, the more grounded I am, the more I'm away from the attachments that I have in my life, and I maintain that, I come back and I'm creating the most powerful content I've ever created. In fact, this whole episode right here is something that I outlined while I was in the woods yesterday. Because I was able to move away from any attachments that I had, say exactly what I wanted to say, feel how I wanted to feel, came back, here I am today, still feeling that power, and now I'm giving you guys this episode. And so for me personally, the biggest thing is if I'm feeling like I'm getting trapped by the bubble, controlled by the bubble, I get myself out of the bubble. I create outside of the bubble, I then re-enter the bubble, I distribute, I give, I offer all of that stuff while inside the bubble. And then slowly what starts to happen is the bubble will start to control me a little bit. So what do? Boom, I move myself out of the bubble, go into nature, create, come back, deliver what I need to deliver inside the bubble, and whew, I'm gone again. And that's been my process of creating really powerful content, regaining my personal power, and starting to lose attachments. So I encourage you guys to do the same. We're actually going to be documenting a lot more of it on Instagram. And so stories and reels documenting me into the woods, sitting in silence, regaining personal power, what that looks like. So if you want to follow along with that journey, you can head over to Instagram at I am Brandon Lucero and check it out. And if you haven't left us a review on iTunes, I'd be so grateful for that. We haven't had a review in a while. So who's going to be the first one to leave us a review? The reviews just help us get more exposure, get our message out there. And the more exposure we have, the more I am able to help you. So hope you guys have a great day. Hope this episode was insightful, was helpful. And that's it. We're going to wrap up, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care, everyone. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.